Bliss.io.
I shoot my shot and it's clean. This is my city, yeah, this is my team. If you talking and talking me nice, I play with all of my life. You see my name in the lights, better get right, champion. The game is in trouble. I've been in my depth for the piece of the puzzle. I got it for real.
Ironically, was on my end. It wasn't on the podcast software, but it was on my end when I was getting this microphone checked in.
It is all good. I did one with our Oklahoma State podcast. This must have been like 6 months ago. And we got on and he was so flustered. He's like, dude, I don't know what's happening. I can't hear you. And so he's digging through. And finally he realizes I don't have my volume up. He didn't have it on mute, but he had it on the lowest
all the way down.
So he couldn't hear me, right?
That's why I was hitting those. I was hitting mute. I was hitting volume. I'm like, what is going on here? And then I just thought, I'm like, oh wait, there was an input output. And I started like just dialing it back of what I was doing with this mic. I'm like, did I accidentally put both things to the microphone? And that's exactly what I did. So
nice.
Good morning, Teague. I'm glad we're here, man. Awesome.
It's all good. It's all good.
Awesome. So
I'm gonna make sure I mute this phone because this thing will be periodically going off, but I'm going to make sure that's quiet.
So got to give the introduction, right? Teague Moore, North Allegheny, right? Who is the legendary coach you wrestled for?
Well, I wrestled for George DiAugustino, but the longtime North Allegheny head coach was Gus DiAugustino.
So that was his son you wrestled for?
It was his nephew. And Gus left North Allegheny in 1990 when my brother Ty's class came through with Ty and Ray Brinzer and that whole crew.
Crazy team.
He ended up taking the job at Duquesne. They started a Division I wrestling team there. So in 91, Gus went to Duquesne and his nephew, who was my junior high coach, took over the helm at the high school. So I wrestled for George DiAugustino.
Gotcha. So you didn't even have a year under Gus?
No, I didn't. But I did when I was in high school. I would go down to Duquesne and train with his club team. And his assistant coaches when I was in high school.
Gotcha. And I know it's not easy talking about yourself. And I know you had given me some of your accolades, 9 national titles, world title. Run through that if you're comfortable doing that. I know it's not always easy to, talk about yourself, but you have some amazing accomplishments.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so I didn't have success early on growing up. I didn't really come into my own until my sophomore year of high school. I didn't qualify to the Pennsylvania States my freshman year. And then I won the AAU Folk Style Nationals out in Iowa after my sophomore year. I then won the Junior Nationals in freestyle that sophomore year. Won Junior Nationals again my junior year. That's when I got recruited by John Smith to Oklahoma State. Won Junior Nationals my senior year, high school nationals that year. Then when I moved on to Oklahoma State, I won what they called back then the Espoir Nationals, which was 20 and under. Won that nationals, won the University Nationals, which is now the U23s. Back then, University Nationals was 24 and under. And then I got the opportunity to go and wrestle at the University World Championships in Tokyo, Japan. And I won the University World Championships there. Actually, 4 Americans won it that year. We had a really good year at the University Worlds, Cale Sanderson being one of them, Byron Tucker being another. And then won the U.S. Open in 2002. And that time frame there from high school, 10th grade, all the way until I finished my international career in 2004 was 9 national titles and 1 world title.
That's simply amazing. That is freaking awesome, man.
Thank you.
Has quite the accomplishments for sure.
Thanks.
Where I know you obviously have one sibling. Do you have several siblings? Like if you can take me back into the more wrestling tree and how it started for you and your family. I'm intrigued to know where, because a lot of this stuff, wrestling is family oriented, right? If there's an
Yeah.
older sibling that started, typically the younger siblings follow suit.
Yeah, 100%. And that was my family. I'm the youngest of 7. My mom and dad actually had 10 kids, but
Wow.
they lost 3. They lost twins that would have been the oldest, and then they lost a single birth in between my brother Ty and my sister Tina. But I was the youngest of 7. The first 5 came within 6 years, and then there was a little bit of a gap, my brother Ty, and then there was another 5-year gap, and then me. So my siblings are, my oldest brother, who's deceased now, was 16 and a half years older than I was. So there was a big separation between the oldest and the youngest. And wrestling, my mom and dad never did the sport, didn't know the sport until my older brothers got approached by a family friend. He had wrestled at Clarion University back in the late 40s, early 50s. He had some boys that were he was bringing up in wrestling, but at that time, the Seneca Valley wrestling program outside of Pittsburgh didn't have a wrestling program. So he did what most people do. He started them wrestling there at the house on the living room carpet. That turned into getting a mat at the school. And then it kind of took off from there. So my second oldest brother, third oldest brother, my brother Terry and my brother Tommy, they wrestled through Seneca Valley and graduated from Seneca Valley in 79 and 80. My brother Tommy placed in the Pennsylvania State Championships and then got a scholarship to go to Appalachian State. He wrestled at App State from 80 to 83. Well, as that was all going on, my brother Ty, whom a lot of people know in Pennsylvania or know Ty's name, he was a 4-time Pennsylvania State champion, only lost once in high school. Arguably one of the best high school wrestlers in Pennsylvania history.
100%.
His record, I think it was 146-1. He had some crazy, I should know this statistic, but he had some crazy number, like 109 falls. So he was a monster on the mats.
I think he
And
was a freshman when I was a senior. I think so.
okay.
I was 87.
Yeah.
Would that have made him a freshman?
Yeah, correct. He won
That was his first
87.
title then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
98 pounds, which doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, he was a little guy in 87. And that was
Yeah.
the year, if you were a senior, Kurt Angle was a senior that year.
Yeah. He ended up my roommate in college.
Oh,
Kurt.
nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
my freshman year, and then I bolted on him.
Okay.
But yeah, no, Kurt was that was 87. That was a year of 87. Lot of tough guys in that year. I think there was at the time, I think, don't quote me, but I think there was a record like 4 or 5 falls in the finals of
Wow.
states that year. So yeah, it was
Very
pretty
cool.
wild. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good era in Pennsylvania. A number of those guys went on to be NCAA All-Americans, NCAA champions.
Yep.
There was a good history there at that time.
Yeah. So you had your older brother started, and you said Seneca Valley. Just curious, because obviously you and Ty wrestled at North Allegheny. Was that Seneca Valley? Was that a high school or?
Yeah,
Okay.
correct. It's a high school, and they've had a good wrestling history themselves. But when Ty was in 8th grade, my dad was, doing like most dads do. He was seeking out the best training that he could find. And just up the road was North Allegheny High School and Gus. And so Ty was spending a ton of time in the North Allegheny room in the summers doing Gus's camps and summer wrestling Tuesdays and Thursdays, as I was young, 4th grader. And my dad made the decision at that time, we're going to sell the family home. We're going to move to North Allegheny so that Ty can wrestle for Gus. And at that time in 87, that was the fall of 86. You didn't have the chaos that you have now where, there's lawsuits going on for parents trying to put their kids in better situations. And so we made the move, and the
Well, that's a
results.
commitment. That's a
Yeah.
commitment, right? Selling your house and picking up and buying in another school district. I mean, that's a commitment for your kids.
Yeah, 100%. And my mom and dad were all in. I'm sure a lot of your listeners, they're from families that the parents are fully committed to get their kids the best opportunities. And that was my mom and dad. Our mom and dad's, my dad didn't graduate high school. My mom did. Neither parent went to college. And so their whole thing, raising kids in the 70s and the 80s, they just wanted us to have the opportunity to go to college. And when my dad realized wrestling offered scholarships, and we were tiny people. Like I said, Ty was 98 pounds his freshman year. He wasn't going to be on the football field. He wasn't going to be on a basketball court. And so my dad said, look, you guys are going to excel in wrestling, and I'm going to make sure that you get the best instruction you can, and we'll see where it goes. And ultimately, 3 of us ended up getting scholarships to go wrestle in college. And even my sisters, I had a sister that went to UPJ, and I had another sister that went to Edinburgh. And so my parents were just really supportive, and they wanted to see us get that college opportunity, that experience. And we all did. We had that opportunity to do it. And I even had some brothers that they tried college, but it just wasn't for them. And so, like my brother Terry, he's been running his own construction and remodeling business for 40 years now. And so he went the path of being self-employed and entrepreneur. And then we had the others that, we went to college, did our thing. And for me, not only did I get the opportunity to wrestle in college, but then I got the opportunity to coach. I made it my career for 20 years, working at universities. And so my mom and dad really fostered that in us to give us those type of opportunities.
Yeah, that is so cool. And you got obviously, a different mix, with your brother, the home remodeler entrepreneur. He probably makes more money than all you guys combined, in today's world. Um, but no, that's awesome. And did you win a PIAA state title?
I did, but ironically, I was winning the junior nationals in freestyle, much bigger tournament than a lot of people. I was winning the junior nationals, but I couldn't win a Pennsylvania state title. I think some of that, now that I'm on the other side of things and I help wrestlers with like mindset and match anxiety, competition anxiety, I fell short my sophomore year. I lost in the finals to a guy named Jeremy Hunter, who ended up being a national champ for Penn State. So I had beaten him the 2 weekends previously leading up to states, and then I lost to him in the state finals. Came back my junior year and was undefeated the whole year. And then I fell short in like the quarterfinals round to a guy named John Horvat that ended up going and wrestling at UVA.
Yeah.
I
remember
so
that name.
I struggled to win the Pennsylvania State championships, but that didn't deter Coach Smith from Oklahoma State from recruiting me, because he saw my success on the freestyle circuit. And when the first time I ever got to talk to Coach, I told him that I had aspirations of world teams and in Olympics, and Oklahoma State having the history that it did,
And
he
John,
kind of zeroed right in on that, and I became the guy that he wanted for 118 pounds. So
yeah. Well, you can't ask for a better coach. And it almost
yeah.
sounds, and I don't know, obviously, yourself better than I do, but when you were going through your accolades there, I'm like, man, you almost sound like a better freestyle wrestler than folk or collegiate. Like, you just seem like that almost was a natural fit. And I don't know if that was the case or not.
Yeah.
I personally liked freestyle more than folk style. But just listening, winning Fargo, at a young age, and all the things that you did on the world stage, I'm just like, wow, that's just incredible.
Yeah.
And then going to Oklahoma State under John Smith, who was, arguably, I'll call it one of the GOATs, right? Because, you know, trying to compare, and we can get into that later, comparing different generations of wrestlers and whatnot, and what does a GOAT mean, right? But he was certainly, I remember, I mean, he was so incredibly quick, and to have him as a coach. Did you get to wrestle with him a lot?
Coach didn't wrestle with us much at that time. But he did get hands-on in terms of our drilling and what he wanted us to execute on. So I didn't get to wrestle with him live very much, but I was hands-on with him in the room. And he had just finished his career. I came to Oklahoma State in the fall of '95. He had retired after winning the '92 Olympics, and he was young. So he was still, I think when I got there, coach was 28 or 29 when I got there. So he was still just off of his prime. So
Yep.
to be able to get hands on with a coach like that was like, talk about jumping levels.
Right.
Yeah, there was a lot of great experiences in the Oklahoma State room where he's a technical master. Like, I don't know that there's anybody better than coach technically when you really start breaking down technique. And he was able to pass that on to us, and emphasize why certain things were so important in tiny positions. So very detailed oriented, really drove us to understand like repetition is king. We had, I don't even know if you could do this anymore, but we had some college practices. Eric Guerrero and I, when we were freshmen, we would have to go in early and we would be with coach, just he and I with coach. We would start those practices at like 2:30, 3 o'clock. The team would roll in 3:30 or 3:45, and then we would do a full 2.5 hour practice with the team. And so that freshman year, that fall, Eric and I were logging just hours and hours of time in the room and getting reps. And coach imposed upon us the things that made him great, which was being very detail oriented.
So coming out of high school, were there multiple schools you were looking at, or were you honed in and going, that's where I want to go?
Well, I tell this story in my consulting a little bit. I had a bit of an advantage. My brother Ty was at North Carolina. He was wrestling for Bill Lamb at North Carolina, had Kendall Cross as an assistant coach. He had TJ Jaworski as a teammate. TJ started, he was an Oklahoma kid, 4-time Oklahoma State champion, and then transferred to North Carolina. So I had a very unique situation. I could talk to guys in the Division I wrestling rooms and guys like Kendall Cross that were national champions, TJ Jaworski that was winning multiple national championships. And both of those guys were Oklahomans, had won multiple junior national titles. When I started winning, and then I would go down to Chapel Hill to see Ty, those guys would tell me the history of Oklahoma State, right? And so that really started my understanding. A teammate of Ty's, Ray Brinzer, had also gone and wrestled at Oklahoma State.
Oh,
So for
wow.
me,
I didn't know
my
that.
my choices, were very. I had a very narrow window. I was looking at Oklahoma State, Penn State, and Cornell. Rob Cole had just taken over at Cornell.
Yep.
They had just started producing national champions. Penn State, in the state of Pennsylvania, everybody always considered Penn State. They weren't the power that they are now.
Yep.
And then for me, because of my connections with Oklahoma State, and I started to understand that history, the most gold medalists of anywhere in the United States, any college program, most NCAA champions, most NCAA All-Americans, most NCAA team titles. The history at Oklahoma State was really where I gravitated to. And with Coach Smith having just started taking the realm there, they had won the national championships in '94. And so that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in that culture. I wanted to be surrounded by that mindset. It's very difficult. Like for your listeners, anybody that maybe is just new to college wrestling, I would encourage you to do your homework on college wrestling. What are the teams and the coaches that have won? Oklahoma State has done it decade after decade after decade. And yes, there's times that, we're coming out of a stretch right now. We haven't won a team title in quite a while, but we've still been producing individual national champions, and they're going to go back to that under David Taylor of team titles. So anybody that learns about that, for me, when I saw that history, I didn't really open up and talk to a lot of schools. I got recruited by a lot of schools, but I wasn't really interested in many beyond those three.
Interesting. I didn't hear Iowa in that because I know Gable coming off of the late 70s, 80s, right?
Yeah.
Um, interesting that that wasn't on your short list, but impressive. You must have been a heck of a student too, if you were considering Cornell, um, in that mix. You brought up briefly your consulting business, and that's called the Wrestling Consultant. Is that the
Correct.
name of it?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. I'm going to give you a shameless plug here. How's that? I want to know more about what that's about and how you came about that. Um, so tell me what it is, what's it about, and how you came up with it.
Yeah. So what it is I took my knowledge of 20 years of college coaching. I had been through a number of programs. I was an assistant coach at Pitt, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Harvard before I got my first head job at Clarion. And then I was a head coach for Clarion at 5 years and then American University for 10 years. So I had this unique knowledge and experience at a lot of different institutions, big giant state schools, small private schools, Ivy League schools. So I felt like 2021, I knew I didn't want, when I got out of coaching, I didn't want to go back in and live the life of a college coach. College coaching is ultra demanding. It takes every ounce of your time, effort, and energy. And I knew in 2021 I wanted to go a different path. And so I started the wrestling consultant as a way of kind of scratching the itch. I wanted to stay involved in wrestling. I just didn't want it to be my life and rule my life anymore. And so I could offer this knowledge. And there's a lot of parents out there that don't know how many options are available for their wrestler. Their wrestler wants to go on and compete in college, but the parents are like, we just don't even know what's available. And obviously, most high school kids don't even know what's available. Well, to give you, a quick snapshot, for guys in high school, technically there's 500 over 500 college programs for guys to look at, right? And that's a wide range: D1, D2, D3, NAIA, junior college, California junior college system, club teams, National Club Wrestling Association. So there's a lot of options. The vast majority we always think about and hear are your division ones, division twos, maybe some division threes, right? But as a parent, if they want to get their wrestler moved on to the next level, they just don't know where to turn, where to look. There's not a lot of insight into that. And so that's what I started doing. I offered my knowledge and understanding to high school boys and girls that know they want to go on and wrestle in college, men's and women's programs. And so I help them navigate that path, find out what's available, what are their decision points. Some families are going to make decisions based on geography. How close is it to home? Academics, do they have the academic field that my wrestler wants? Can we afford it? Finances plays a big role in that. The application process and system can be very daunting. As I mentioned, my experience 2 years as an assistant at Harvard, that application process looks much different than Clarion University, which looks different than American University, which looks different than the University of Pittsburgh. So I had gone through all of these processes, and I wanted to be able to offer that out to families to help them figure this out. And so that's what my consulting is. It's really about helping the high school wrestlers find the right coach, the right program, and the right place for them. As I started doing that, my consulting, the recruiting piece of it, it morphed into the dads and the families that I worked with would say, Teague, thank you so much for helping them get him on this path. and understanding the recruiting process. He's doing great with that, but we need help in this other area. He like, can you watch his videos and give us critique? Can you tell us where to go and wrestle? What's the competition regimen? What should it look like? What tournaments should he go to? When should he go? Who should he be involved with? What's his training look like? Is he doing enough strength and conditioning? What's the nutrition habits look like? Can you talk to him about getting off his phone and getting enough sleep when he's training? So there were all these other pieces of the puzzle that if you want to succeed, you have to kind of get these things in motion. So then my consulting also ended up being what I call a mentorship. So I offer the recruiting packages. Then I also offer the mentorship packages. So the mentorship, I have some wrestlers as young as 6th grade that I'm working with, and I do a monthly Zoom call with them, and we talk about a host of these things. Tell me what you're working on in practice. When you go to this competition, how are you handling match preparation? Are you going through mental checklists to make sure you're mentally prepared as much as physically warmed up? And so the mentorship has now taken off, and I have the recruiting piece that's working and happening, and that's what some families need. And then I've got the mentorship piece that other wrestlers need, right? They just need somebody that can help guide them, offer suggestions and advice that maybe mom and dad, if they didn't wrestle, they just don't know. And so I can offer that to them.
When you just went through that, it's amazing. You reflect on your own. I'm the youngest of 6, and none of my siblings went to college, so I was the first to go to college. And man, could I have used a program like that, because when you're the first in your family to do that, guess what? You have no clue.
Yeah, you're the guinea pig.
You have absolutely no clue. So if that was something that existed back then, again, this is obviously pre-computer, right? You
Yeah.
know, 1987. But I've never heard of anything like that. I don't know if if you even have competition. I can't imagine you do. Maybe you do. You would probably know
Yeah.
better than I. And obviously we don't want to mention if their name, if there is competition, but, you know, I've never heard of any, and I think it's great that you're doing it because, you know, obviously you going through the steps and the journey that you went through in coaching and talking to these families. I mean, that's an amazing product that you actually offer, a service, you know,
Thank
to
you.
these kids. I
Thank
mean,
you.
it really is, because there is so much to it. It's not like, oh, let me just pick a school and let me go there and I'm going to have a great experience, you know.
Yeah.
There's so much to it.
Yeah. To your point, so yes, there is competition. There's a few guys in the wrestling community that when I got this going, they were trying to kind of copy and say they're doing the same thing. But here's what I could tell your listeners. I spent 25 years wrestling in college and then 20 years coaching, 15 years as a head coach. A lot of these coaches, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, I know the Division 1 coaches and coaching staffs, most of these guys are good friends, right? You don't wrestle in the sport or coach in the sport for 40 years and not know your people in your industry. So I know a lot of these coaches, and when I work with my clients, I can say to them, here's the personality of this coach, right? Tim Flynn at West Virginia, his style of coaching, it's going to be drastically different than a Kevin Dresser at Iowa State, which is different than a Chris Bono at Wisconsin, right? Which is different than a Keith Gavin at Pitt. So I know these guys, and I can personally talk to the kids and the parents and say, this is a person and this is a coach I think you're a great fit for, right? And then if they say, we looked into this and, you know, Aunt Susie lives right next to such and such university and we're thinking about wrestling for that coach, I can say, personally, I don't know if that's a good fit. And here's why, right? The coach over there is they're going to want you to do this, this, and this. Here's the lifestyle or the culture of their program. I don't know that that's a great fit for you. We can obviously explore it and look into it and see if all of the pieces of the puzzle work together for you. But I'm really concerned about the coach and the athlete relationship, that's huge for your experience. Does the institution and where you're trying to take yourself academically, does all of that work together? And I can give my honest opinion on that. And this has happened a number of times. We're going through it and I'm filtering them down and saying, here's where you should focus your energy. These are the 8 or 10 programs I really think you got to do your homework on. And they say, well, we want to look at this one over there. And I say, absolutely, let's do it. Let's go through and see what fits. And then as we go through that process, they in that self-study start to realize, oh, well, we don't really have a backup option. If you don't want to do your major, they don't have second and third options for you that really fit you well for your other interests, right? Maybe they realize the geography, it's so far from home. The wrestler starts realizing, I'm only going to get home for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and maybe in the summertime because it's just too far. You can't jump in a car and drive home from these places, right? And so that's what I try and do. I'm trying to narrow in on, are you going to get the full experience? Ultimately my goal, I think things work out when somebody goes somewhere to wrestle and they stay there for 4 or 5 years, regardless of their wrestling results. To me, that's a great choice. That tells me that your experience is everything you wanted. And in the world of the transfer portal, my goal is to not have you transfer. I want you to go somewhere where you're gonna grow and really develop into your own and get a great experience. Some of your listeners may not know this, but dollars and cents. If you go to a school and let's say after a year it's not working out for whatever reason, you go to transfer. Most colleges, when they're accepting a transfer student, they are almost every time going to look at your transcripts and they're going to lop 4 classes right off the top, maybe 5. We don't accept those in transfer. So now you're going to have to repeat those classes at the new institution to be able to get your degree sheet completed from there, right?
Yep.
Dollars and cents, if you're taking 4 classes a semester or 5 classes a semester, which is the norm, your tuition and fees for that one semester gets lopped off the top. So when you go to institution B and you start doing your thing, and now you've got to repeat those classes that you were already paid for, but they don't get accepted. In today's value of education, you're talking anywhere from $10,000 at a small state school for a semester of tuition, books, and fees to some of the private schools. I mean, American universities, $80,000 a year. So one semester's 40 grand. Your tuition, books, and fees might be 25. You go somewhere else and lose those credits, that's 20 grand out the door, right? And so when I put it into that sense, moms and dads really start to understand we got to make the right choice because we don't want you hopping from school to school as you go about your college education. Let's try and find the right fit. Let's take our time with it. Let's get the full experience and understand so that when you go there, you're going to be able to finish out your wrestling and your academic career there.
Yeah. Again, just listening to all this is essentially you take the athlete and let's face it, like any decision, there's a roll of the dice. And maybe today with, to your point, the transfer portal, maybe there's a little less risk, but any decision you're making, and especially in the point that you just made about the dollars and cents of what it costs to go, again, your service that you provide with the wrestling consultant is you're really just honing down and trying to really focus in and figure out, hey, these 2 schools are really the best fit for you, and here's why. And to me, that's amazing, and I think you probably, you may know or not know, but your percentage of giving a kid the chance to succeed and be successful, not just as an athlete, but as a student and the environment they're put in, again, has to go up at, just a huge amount for them, compared to just like closing an eye and going, well, this is a really good wrestling program. I'm going to go here. I heard good things about their coach, where you really break it down and say, hey, your style of wrestling and what I've seen on video and getting to know you personally, I know this program over here, and this is what you want to study. To your point, chances of being there more than just 1 or 2 years has to go up extra, again, it's just got to give them a much better chance of success, going through your program. So I appreciate you sharing that. And the other thing, you brought up the transfer portal. Any thoughts, feelings about NIL in sports, wrestling, other sports, whatever it is, and you're giving a smile. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming you have an opinion on NIL.
Yeah. So I'm going to use my family as the example because I told you we had three of us get wrestling scholarships and go on to college. This was back in the day. The NCAA absolutely controlled everything, right? You were on scholarship and you got your school paid for, but you weren't allowed to go have a job if you were on full scholarship. It was against the NCAA rules, right? So
So
looking back,
say that again. You weren't allowed to have a job if you were on full NCAA scholarship.
correct. At that time, when I went through college, when Ty went through college, you were not technically allowed to have a job if you were on full scholarship. The NCAA had a a belief that if you were on full scholarship and you got your tuition, books, fees, and room and board paid for, you shouldn't be allowed to go get a job because you're going to take a job away from another student or person that's going to school there that needs that job to be able to pay for school. So the NCAA created this system. I've got words that I normally use, but I won't use them now. They owned the student athletes, right? You could you could lose eligibility if they found out that you were working and making money that was beyond your scholarship. They could literally take your eligibility away. This was the whole Johnny Manziel thing when he's selling t-shirts with his picture on it. And the NCAA goes into a tizzy because he might be making money off of his image, right? Well,
God
thank
forbid, right?
goodness. Yes, thank goodness we threw that system away. It's garbage. And now the student athletes are able to make above and beyond scholarship,
Scholarship.
tuition, books, and fees, right? And now we're seeing in the sport of wrestling, we're seeing the values of these guys for these institutions go through the roof. So there are numbers now that people are throwing around that some of these guys are excess of $1 million. So if I looked at my family and I know how good my brother Ty was when he was coming through high school, had he been able to capture a large sum of money that maybe would have changed his situation in college. Yes, he was on full scholarship, but we were still in a system that was so broken. I was going to school at Oklahoma State. My family was still financially, we were still struggling. My dad was a postal worker. My mom stayed at home, right? My mom and dad didn't have money to throw me on a plane in Oklahoma City and fly me back to Pittsburgh so I could, come back and see family. I literally came home 3 times a year, my freshman and sophomore year. And then after that, I only came home 1 time a year because we just didn't have the funds to get me back and forth. Right.
Right.
Well, now these NIL deals can give the student athlete what their value is. Right. And so I'm not going to dive into all of it, but there's some wrestlers out there that are now getting excess of $1 million to go to these
Wow.
schools and wrestle. And I say, finally, yes, this is the value that this wrestler brings to this institution. If this wrestler can put 15,000 people in seats to buy tickets, buy concessions, buy their mascot memorabilia, all of those things. And if a car dealership nearby wants to put their name on them, they absolutely should be able to do this stuff, right?
Yep.
My only fear, John, my only fear is that we're going to lose the value of the education. And so again, I go back to myself. My dad preached to us, you're wrestling so that you can get an education. That was his only concern. He didn't care about me winning an NCAA title. My dad literally would tell me, like, you get a college scholarship, I don't care if you ever win a match again. You bring a degree home,
Yeah.
right? He never
Yep.
got that opportunity. He saw what happened to people that got college educations and what the difference in the lifestyle that they had.
Yep.
So that's what he impressed upon us. You get your education. And I did. I did well for myself academically at Oklahoma State. I was actually wanting to pursue graduate school and eventually professorship with history. But then my international wrestling took me a different direction, and I ended up going into coaching, and that's all history now, right?
Yep.
But the NIL is changing the game drastically. And I just hope that these guys that are getting these opportunities, it's great. Put your money away, get it invested right, you know, and make sure you get your education, because when this is done in the next 4, 5, 6 years, when the education piece is done, it's hard to go back and then get your education or get a
Yeah.
master's degree in those things. Do it while you're young, do it while it's right in front of you.
Yeah.
And we have a great system in the United States that we put sports with education and they work together hand in hand. I don't want us to lose that. I don't want college sports to become just a
About money.
professional, yeah, about money, to where the education is a foregone thing and these kids are not showing up in classrooms to get an education. Ultimately, I don't care what sport you're doing, it's probably going to come to an end at some point. Your cleats, your wrestling shoes are going to come off, and then it's time to move on. Did you educate yourself enough that you can move on to the next step in life?
Yeah. And do you have that vehicle to take you to the next level?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's awesome. And I agree with you 100%. My only feeling on that piece is I feel like Johnny Manziel, I'm sure if you haven't, the Netflix Johnny Manziel documentary,
I haven't seen it yet.
dude, you should check it out. It's great because it actually touches upon that, about how he's going into the school bookstore after they beat Alabama, and he's seeing his jersey there. And they're building a brand new football stadium. They've got all these kids that want to go to Texas A&M, partially because there's a lot of excitement surrounding. They just beat Alabama. And then he's going in the school bookstore and he's seeing his jersey there, and the school's making all this money and he's not making a dollar. And
Yeah.
so it's like the NCAA went from, one direction right here. And, now they've gone, all the way over here, and the in-between steps have been kind of skipped, I think. So hopefully they can close that gap, you
Yeah.
know, um, because it seems a little bit like the Wild West right now,
Oh, it is. It
like
is.
the NIL stuff, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. They're gonna, and it sounds like they're gonna put some rules in place, but it is absolutely the Wild West right now. If your program can put together the dollars and cents that are needed, man, you can go out there and offer deals. You can buy backup lineups and keep those kids from being at your competitor's school. You can just buy them out, right? It's like the old New York Yankees attitude. If we can't beat them, we'll buy them, and
Well,
then we don't have to play against them. And
what
that
do
and that is absolutely happening at our Division 1 schools in wrestling. It's definitely happening. It's not all 80 D1s by no stretch of the imagination, but the top 10 that have the dollars and cents are able to absolutely buy athletes away from other schools. It's happening.
well, two things on that point. We're going to go way back here into John DuPont, right?
Mhm.
What would Villanova look like
Yeah.
if he had that weapon?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
We would definitely see Villanova as a top tier wrestling school right now because he had an open checkbook. And I mean, let's face it, you get approached. I don't care how loyal you are to a program. You get approached and somebody says, I'm going to offer you enough money, it's going to be life changing. You said something earlier. You were a first generation college student. My family, first generation college students. The sport of wrestling has the most, and it's not even close. We have the most first generation college students of any of the NCAA sports. So if somebody approaches you and says, I'm going to not only give you the opportunity to wrestle, I'm going to give you an education, and I'm going to put so much money in your bank account that it's going to change the trajectory of your life and maybe your kids, who's going to say no to that? Right?
Very few.
So we're in an interesting time, and we'll see what happens when the dust settles here in about a decade.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely interesting times for sure. The last piece, um, thoughts on, the rules over the past couple years have changed in our sport, from the 2-point takedown to the 3-point takedown. Thoughts on the rule changes that you've seen over the past several years, to what rule changes, if any, would you like to see? Um, and again, if any, maybe you don't, but
Yeah.
any thoughts on the rules of our sport? Anything that could be implemented? I know we're cranking down here to another 15 minutes, 12 minutes, but
Yeah.
your thoughts on that? Rule changes?
Yeah, this is definitely a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, and maybe we could do a part 2, because I
Yeah,
really enjoyed this, Teague. This was this was great, learning about your business and your family, and I'd love to do a part 2.
yeah. Well, okay,
Be sure and touch.
rules. So as I mentioned, I'm a history guy. I love reading history. And while I was at Oklahoma State, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame for the sport of wrestling, it's on our campus. Okay. So I could literally walk out of our wrestling room. I could walk 100 yards and I'm in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, which when Myron Roderick was running it back in the 90s, it had its own little wrestling library. So it's got a room loaded with wrestling books. One of those books that I read was The History of College Wrestling, right? So college wrestling has gone through all these changes and adaptations, and some kind of like we're doing right now, they tweaked and changed for the excitement of the sport. Others were like dire necessities. They needed to be able to have insurance, so they took out like the 5-point throwing rule when they're wrestling on canvas horsehair mats, right? People were 5-pointing each other, and guys were literally getting injured to the point where it was like, harming them for the rest of their life. So I say all that because wrestling right now, we made some rule changes. I think they're good. I think college wrestling rules right now are okay. My personal opinion is I think we should take it even a step further. I'm of the old school thinking. College wrestling should be freestyle, right? And I know there's some of your listeners that are going to boo-hoo about that, and oh, we can't do freestyle because XYZ. Well, actually, we can. And you know why we can? Because the women are doing it. We have to have a whole different set of officials for women's college wrestling because they're going to be doing freestyle, right? So
Yep.
don't tell me that we can't do it. Look, if you want my personal opinion, it's a bunch of old, cranky assholes that don't want to get away from folk style. Why? Because it's the only time they've spent in wrestling rooms is with folk style. I personally think freestyle much more exciting. Historically, yes, freestyle's gone through its ups and downs with rule changes, but if you want to pit the most athletic against the most athletic, the freestyle rules show that. Very exciting for fans, and you can tweak it and change it, whatever. But I truly think we should be doing freestyle in colleges. We should keep folk style. I'm not saying we get rid of it, but it should be that redheaded stepchild that we keep in the corner during the summertime. And when we get through high school and college season, I think we should then encourage kids, go do some folk style in the summer and do those sort of things. Now, I've gone through these debates time and time again. I actually did an event. Most people might not remember this, but in 2013, we were going to lose wrestling in the Olympics.
Yep.
So I was one of the guys that said, let's just try something different. Some of our top tier guys needed money. So I put a cash prize tournament together. And the difference in what we did was we took the clock out of the equation. There was no clock. So when you stepped on the mat, you guys would shake hands and you would start wrestling. The first guy to score his 10th point won the match. And we tweaked the rules so that it was a hybrid of freestyle and folk style. So there was advantages in different positions for different things. But ultimately, my thing is, I want to see scoring. I want to see points. And so that should be the goal of the match. The goal of the match should not be just get enough points and then let the clock run out. I think the goal of the match should be to score X amount of points. And when you do that, you win, right? So
Yep.
that's a long way of saying that's what I would like to see in wrestling. I would like to see it more point oriented than time oriented. And I say this to some people, would volleyball look different if they won their sets based on the clock as opposed to getting to 25 points to win the set? Right? So would volleyball look a little bit different if the score's 13-11 and my team is taking a little bit longer,
To
to get
serve.
the ball over the net so we can get the time to crunch down, and then the buzzer goes off and I win
Yeah.
the set, 13-11.
Yeah.
And I think the answer is yes. So
Stalling in volleyball.
yeah, I just feel like for wrestling, it's exciting when people score points.
Yeah.
So that's what I would like to see. I would like to say you're going to win the match when you score X amount of points or you pin the guy.
I agree with you. I'd also like to see more consistency with the stall calls. And instead of it, you know, I'm sure you agree to a point, like you see matches and it's like all of a sudden at the end of the match, stalling starts getting, they start calling it, right? Well, where was that in the first period, right? But
The rule is written the same in the first period as the
that's
third
it.
period,
That's
right?
it.
But the officials have been told, hey, now it's really important in the last minute, and you got to be
Sure.
watching this guy for stalling. Hey, that guy might have been busting his butt for the first 6 minutes. He might be really tired because he's been working so hard for 6 minutes. Don't penalize him now.
Yeah. And
You
it's
know?
either psychologically that the fans are booing or
Yeah,
that ref wants to be part of the decision,
yeah,
right? And either way, it's wrong. It's just be consistent with it. The
yeah.
other thing that I think hurts wrestling to a degree, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but so they started girls wrestling. My daughter wrestles. Um, and they started, colleges freestyle. So, but they start the girls, except for the state of New York, I'm told their high school girls wrestling is freestyle. So to me, to your point, if you're going to start girls wrestling, what, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, why start it folk style when in college it's freestyle? Just
And
make it all. And so it's hard enough for the new fan to follow and understand the point scoring to begin with, but now you're going to start something brand new where some of these girls are, let's say they started as a sophomore or junior, they're going to do 2 years of folk style and then they go to college and you go, I really want to wrestle. Well, you got to change your style. What do you mean? Yeah, well, college is freestyle. And I think to your point, what they should have done is when they started girls wrestling, okay, if college is going to be freestyle, then scholastic, you know, youth, middle school, high school for girls, it's going to be freestyle because that's what college is. It
yeah,
makes no sense to go folk style,
yeah.
and then go freestyle, at
Well,
least for the girls.
John, to your point, like here's where the folly came in on that. They gave the states the choice to decide if they're going to do freestyle or folk style. And so what did you get? You got a bunch of crankety old men who've been sitting in these positions for 4 decades,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And that's the way we've done it, and that's the way we're going to do it. You can't have a high school team with, girls practicing freestyle and the boys practicing folk style. We can't do that, right? Well, actually you can,
Yeah. It's like,
right?
why not?
Yeah. Let's just get everybody on the same plane. Let's do everyone freestyle, and let's put folk style where it belongs. Like off to the side, it's a unique American thing, so let's do that. It's unique and American on the side. And let's move ahead with what the rest of the world does. Could you imagine in soccer if like in the United States, we decided like, hey, we're going to play on a circular field while the rest of
Sure.
the world uses the regulation rectangle.
Yeah.
Everybody would be up in arms. They would be like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? But for some reason, we've accepted this weird idea that we should be off doing our own thing in folk style because that's what we've always done. Like, that's a horrible answer.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I'm with you.
I agree
My soapbox.
100%. And I appreciate you so much coming on this morning. And this was awesome. It
Yeah.
really was. And maybe we'll do a part 2 and dive a little deeper into wrestling and potential rule changes. But I really, really appreciate you coming in and talking about your business. And I think it's great what you're doing for kids and for parents and families. And I wish you all the best of luck. And, anything you ever need, man, reach out.
Thank you. If I can just add for your listeners, John,
Yeah.
if you have a high school wrestler or you know somebody that wants to go on and wrestle in college and they need a little help and a little guidance, just go to thewrestlingconsultant.com. It's my website. You can sign up for a free introductory call. My introductory calls, I hear from the family or the wrestler of what they're trying to do, where do they need help? And then I tell them what I do and how I can potentially help them. And if it works out, then I'll get them into my portal and we'll start moving forward on getting them to the right place with the right coaches.
And Teague, what I'll do is when I do post this, I'll put a link in as part of the podcast to make it easy for them.
Thank you.
You got it. Hey, I wish you all the best, man. Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Teague. I appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you, John.
Okay. Take care, man.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You see my name in the lights, better get right. This ain't no regular thing. I came for the ring, you know what I mean. I shoot my shot and it's clean. This is my city, yeah, this is my team.
Music licensing reimagined.
I play with all of my life. You see my name in the lights.